TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Stallion Malibu Moon, AP Indy's leading son 6 years running.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Breeders' Cup alongside Joel Cunningham. I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have a lot to talk about. All the final preps are in the books, but we need to recap some races. And then, as promised, we're going to launch 2 TCI top 5s today. I want to start off with the Juvenile Fillies, though, because your number one, Cavorting, was in action. You know, you were really high on this filly going into the weekend. Very interested, though, to see what you think about her now.
Well, I certainly expected a lot more in the last place performance in the Frizette. However, I do think she has some excuses in there. You know, she's bred to handle the off track, but the way that track was playing, John, everybody that had success in those big races, they were out in the 5-6 path, the crown of the track where the footing was much better. I think anything down on the inside, clearly horses were spinning their wheels there. I don't know if it's a little peanut buttery maybe, a little sticky for them, but you could tell going down the backside, Cavorting was way too keen. That's not her style to be up there and unsettled on the pace like she was. She's a filly that, if you recall when she beat Angela Renee in the grade 2 at Saratoga, she came from off the pace, showed that explosive turn of foot, made her run late, settled early. She didn't settle on this race. She was up and down. You could tell the rider was encouraging her at the half-mile pole, and she really had nothing to offer. So the fact that she ran last in here, you know, it's not like she was eased, and she was along the inside where I don't think you wanted to be. I'm willing to give her a pass. And you rarely see that, a horse run last in their final prep for the Breeders' Cup or anything they're prepping for.
Right.
I usually will throw those horses out every time. For me, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. If we go now to the TCI top 5, I'm going to leave her in the 1 spot. But let me just give this caveat.
Okay.
I think all 5 of these fillies, all 5 of them are very, very close. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, little is separating Cavorting from By the Moon, who was actually a winner in the Frizette pretty easily. But I thought By the Moon had the trip. You know, she was outside on the footing that you wanted to be. You know, I don't think anybody's passing each other in the stretch. And she took command of that race at the 8th pole, and that's the reason she won. But she's obviously a very nice filly, By the Moon.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a pass too. I'm not gonna go too hard and say, you know, it's one thing to give her a pass, but leave her at the number 1 spot. We can talk about that next week.
Well, and you see Feathered. You know, I dropped her. You know from the 2 spot to the 4 spot. I still think Feathered was along the inside. Ran a little green, took a lot of mud. I think Feathered, again, is another filly that I'm very excited to see run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I think she has a ton of talent and upside. All 5 of these fillies, you can pick one of the 5. Whatever's the better price, that's who you need to bet on Breeders' Cup Day, in my opinion.
All right, well, let's talk about your other number 1 over the weekend. He fared a little better. Of course, I'm talking about Carpe Diem in the Breeders' Futurity. Joel, this horse didn't have a lot of experience going into the race, but, man, he really looked good at top of the stretch.
He really did. Just a horse with a tremendous upside. And we talked about not only his ability at 5.5 furlongs in his debut at Saratoga, how exciting that was, but the fact that he did that in his debut, drawing the complete inside where it's hard for a first-time starter to win. We knew he was a real deal that day, and we knew he wanted to get around 2 turns. That's what he's bred for. So now they ship him to the Midwest. First start, 2 turns in a grade 1. And we saw exactly what we hoped to see. Let's go now to the Twin Spires TV race replay at Keeneland here. Hit the play button. He's already taken command of this race, John, at the 8th pole. You see him switch his leads here, draws off. Just a beautiful son of Giants Causeway here. He just destroys this field. And I don't think it was a great field. I mean, Mr. Z, a game greatest stakes horse, runs second here. Good performance for him because he's a colt that I question whether or not he'd be a 2-turn horse. But you see your winner here winning pretty easily. Not sure what he beat. I do think he needs to, Carpe Diem needs to, you know, he's still a little green early in his races. He's a little more keen than I would like to see. And again, that's just his 2nd lifetime start. I think he's a deserving favorite in the Breeders' Cup, but he's going to have to try to match the speed of a horse like American Pharaoh, who's got more starts in him and is at his home track. So it'll be a big test for Carpe Diem next month.
Well, there was another horse that jumped on the scene in a big way over the weekend. And, of course, I'm talking about Daredevil. Joel, he was into Champagne. I mean, this horse, he looked like a monster. I wish we could show that video as well because, man, these were 2 really talented colts over the weekend. But Daredevil was pretty exciting.
Well, it was a sloppy track. And again, it was a tricky track. So, you know, a lot of these performances on these tracks, he might be your favorite now off of that performance. Or, you know, second choice, a close second choice to American Pharaoh, perhaps, John, because he got such a big speed figure. I mean, he got a 104 Brisnet number, and he finished like this. I mean, he was totally, on the last 16th, he did it at his own ease. The rider didn't ask him for anything, and he still ran very fast and beat a very good group in there. But he was on the good part of the track. he was well meant, though. I mean, here's a horse that was 8-5 coming out of a maiden win against an accomplished field that, to me, he didn't look like he should be 8-5 in based on his debut. However, they bet him. They knew they had the goods. Daredevil, to me, is a horse that should get 2 turns. Excited to see how he runs next month.
All right, let's take a look at the TCI top 5, and let's see how that shakes out from over the weekend and where you put Daredevil. I see you kept your number 1, obviously. You know, he didn't do anything to disappoint. So
yeah.
Daredevil jumps on there in a big way. You put him in the number 3 spot.
Little question about the muddy track, John. I mean, I think certainly, you know, anytime you get a big performance like that over an off track that I believe had some biases in it, to me, that's going to draw a lot of money next month in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. For me, he's worth being in the top 3. I happen to like the local horse better, American Pharaoh. When he proved in the front runner he could handle 2 turns, Bob Baffert at his home track, and watch out. You know, his standard is right here around a 103 bris. I mean, he's going to run in the 100 bris number, and you're going to have to come catch him over that speed favoring track. Carpe Diem, I'm keeping him at number 1 just because that's where we've had him. Certainly Lord Nelson, who was well beaten by American Pharaoh. I'm going to keep him on the list. I think he could be a little better than he showed there, and he should get better with experience and may be able to come from off the pace. Upstart's another colt, very talented, ran right behind Daredevil. If he were to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, it wouldn't surprise me at all, even though maybe he has a little bit more of a 7/8 miler type pedigree.
All right, you say miler. It's very interesting because we're going to transition now, and we got 2 top 5s to launch. And let's start off with the mile division. You know, Joel, this race and this horse that we're about to talk about, Wise Dan, I hope that the viewers understand how special this horse is. Yeah. You know, when they brought him back from that colic surgery, I was concerned. I was like, man, is he going to be the same horse? Man, this horse is good. He's one of the best racehorses we've ever seen.
He's incredible, and you know what? He's a horse that's not that much to look at. I mean, I've seen him in person a number of times where I didn't felt physically you wanted to bet him based on looks, and I'm big into that. Now, again, he's established himself that, you know, long ago that you could forget the looks thing. I thought he looked as good in the Keeneland paddock before the Shadwell Mile as maybe I've ever seen him, and almost, you know, scared you to a degree because he usually is not a horse that turns out that well, in my opinion. But he looks so good, John, that I thought the rest of his competition was in trouble.
Yeah.
And he certainly ran his race and beat them very soundly. We'll go now to the Twin Spires TV race replay, and we'll just take a look at the stretch run. I mean, they give up $1 million in this race, and they're going to draw a pretty good field in here. I mean, really, there weren't many throwouts in the race. You see Grand Arch here, see Sayad here, Silver Max on the lead, see Seek again here. A lot of people liked him in this race. Kygan, of Miler, I think is very underrated, and Wise Dan just totally outclasses this field in this race. Heads into his defense of the Breeders' Cup Mile in the right form and fashion. Now, his numbers say he's not as good as he was last year, but physically he looks so good, he's still the horse to beat. But watch out for the Europeans.
All right, well, let's just see right now on the top 5 and go ahead and launch this, and let's take a look at the rest of the horses on here, because like you said, this division is good every year, man. These horses are really exciting to look at, but I don't always know them, so let the viewers know a little bit more about some of these other horses on your top 5.
Well, Wise Dan, again, I said the numbers aren't as good as they were last year. Last year he was running around 106, 107 on Briss, and 103 is his best performance this year, and that was his race at Saratoga last month. So if you believe in maybe Wise Dan's not quite as good as he was last year, maybe a little, lost a half a step, then you could find an excuse to like one of these Europeans. After all, they're better on the grass. I do think Wise Dan has an edge because those, you know, that the North American style, 2 left-hand turns around a 2-turn mile, a speed type course like Santa Anita plays into our hands over the Europeans because they're not going to get a lot of cut in the ground. But a horse like Tornado, for Richard Hannon, top European miler over there, he's going to come now. He's owned by Al Shakab. You know, obviously he's going to have a big contingent in the Breeders' Cup. They're probably going to bring Ruler of the World over. He's going to be one of your favorites in the turf. I think Tornado has a ton of class. He's a horse with a late turn of foot I think can rival Wise Dan in here. And you look at some of the other horses in here, obviously. They chose to skip the prep race at Santa Anita, but here's a colt that has tremendous form on that Santa Anita course that if they don't respect his speed, John, he can take them a long way. Don't ignore this horse on the lead or he could take them gate to wire. And then 2 other Europeans for me. Charm Spirit. You know, he was your local prep winner at Longchamp last time out. He's won 2 Group 1s in a row. Freddie Head trains him. You remember him. He trained Goldakova.
Yep.
If he brings Charm Spirit over, as good as his form is in his last 2 Group 1 performances against the top turf milers in the world over there, you have to respect his class. And then Knight of Thunder's another 3-year-old. Now, he's a Richard Hannon 3-year-old. You know, last year, if you remember, he brought over Olympic Spirit, you know, who did not run well, needed a different type of turf course. He did not bring his top 3-year-old Tornado. Well, this year, Tornado's coming as the 4-year-old, his top 3-year-old miler, Knight of Thunder. it's not unprecedented for him to run both of them. He ran them against each other last time out. I don't know if he's going to bring them for this race, but if he does, he belongs in the top 5.
All right, one more top 5 we need to roll through here. Of course, we're talking about the dirt mile. This is that tricky race where it's not the classic, it's not the sprint.
In-betweeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we see Golden Sense, this horse, always good. He's on this list here. You got him in at number 1, Joel. No surprise there. You know, this horse has really proven himself. He is ultra consistent. He ran over the weekend. They prepped him in a sprint again. I don't think it worked out too good last year. You know, it was a close race, and then it happened again this year.
Let's go to that race first, and then we'll start with Golden Sense, obviously, at number 1. Let's go to the Twin Spires TV race replay, and we'll take a look at the Santa Anita Sprint Championship because, quite frankly, Golden Sense was a horse that I felt they could run in the sprint this year and be very competitive and run for more money. And you see here, he's a little wide here, running into that fast pace. And the European horse coming from overseas has some back class here. He really impressed me. Rich Tapestry, you see him here reaching out. He runs down Golden Sense here, wins in a game finish at the wire. I thought Golden Sense even maybe tried to come back there at the wire. So I really like the performance from the top 2. Rich Tapestry. To me, he's a horse. I know he just did that on dirt. Most people think, well, he's got to be a poly or a turf horse. Watch out for Rich Tapestry in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I think he could be a factor in there. Golden Sense, either way he goes. They say they're going dirt mile. He's the horse to beat in the dirt mile because he can rate and explode on that track, John. Bayern, as good as he is, I think he's the best fit for the dirt mile. You got to catch him. However, I think there's going to be other speed in the race. Baffert's going to send him. He's the most dangerous horse because speed plays on that dirt track. Fed Biz, he's another horse, same connections. Baffert, Kaleem Shaw, horse they tried to run in the dirt mile last year. He's in better form this year by evidence of his narrow defeat last time out in the Awesome Against Stakes. If they run Fed Biz in here, I think that certainly he's a horse that belongs in the top 3. Valid's a colt I've liked all year long. He's been inconsistent, but to me, at a mile, if you look at his speed figure, he's got a 107 Briz in that number. If Valid comes in here and runs his best race, he can factor. And then Tapiture, I threw a 3-year-old in there. I think he's better at a middle distance. A 2-turn mile should be perfect for him. I'm not sure Tapiture's quite as good as some of these other horses, specifically Bayern and Golden Sense. But right now, he's in good enough form. I put him in the 5 spot.
All right, well, thank you, Joel. It's going to be interesting. We'll come back next week and talk about this stuff a lot more. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll launch a few more top 5s, and we'll let you know some key races that we think going into the Breeders' Cup.